Hello, my name is Michael Cardona, Superintendent of Schools of San Marcos CISD, and I'd like to welcome you. We're a small school district about 30 miles south of Austin, Texas. And with me today,
Angela Whitaker Williams. I am the managing principal of the education practice of Perkins & Will in Austin. We are a global architecture and design firm that specializes in K-12.
Hi, my name is Coleman Uresti. I'm a senior project manager for Perkins & Will, and I've been working in educational architecture for over 22 years.
So one of the things we were trying to accomplish as a first-year superintendent coming into a brand new school district and being told that you were going to have a bond in May of 2017 was, okay, wow, what does that mean first? Who do we need to partner with to help us get things started? And then the reality was, how do we design a building that is based on kids first? And so we were rethinking what it meant to be student friendly, kind of moving away from asking kids what they wanted to become when they grow older to asking them what problems do we want to solve. And for that, we needed to talk to the community and our students. So as we began the bond planning process, the bond planning practice, there were some things we needed to consider, right? Where were we at capacity-wise? Were we outgrowing our facilities? And yes, the answer was we were outgrowing our facilities fairly quickly. And to do that, we had to conduct a physical assessment. What is it that we needed to do? Not just the building itself, but the insides of the building and all of our buildings. We needed to conduct an educational assessment. I would like to say it's an academic visioning statement with our community. And we needed to know what type of finances that we had available that would protect our taxpayers and those people we counted on to vote for the bond. And so we began the facility plan, working with a group of community members. And what I want to talk most about here is that it really wasn't, yes, we had those community members who were very supportive, parents, teachers, administrators, but we wanted to get all of the community members. And so you notice the image on the left has a former board member who is pretty conservative in nature. We have some community members from the university. We had some community members who were opposed to the bond. And we brought them all together to start the academic vision. In the middle, you see us me having a conversation with one of our local business owners and some community members. They really wanted to hear from me as a superintendent, which was really a different feeling, because coming from Houston, the community there had their first impressions, but this community in San Marcos really wanted to hear what my vision was as the superintendent of schools. And that began to open dialogues to really look at and rethink what our buildings were going to look like. And so we asked for some thought processes back from our community. And, this happened over a really quick period of time. I got to say, I'm really proud as superintendent that we were able to get such a diverse experience. And obviously capacity was number one. The academic vision was number two. And really what came out from this community vision was, what was the building going to look like 50 years down the road? And then did it address equity for our students? Did it incorporate innovative programs? Was it going to be competitive with other districts? Was it safe and secure? Was it going to have value? We have a very conservative community. And then was there going to be space in the facility for community engagement? That was a big piece for our community that came out. And then was it ultimately, were the facilities going to prepare our kids to be college and career ready? So for the elementary school capacities, we knew that we were reaching, based on our demographers report, this saturation point. And we did start looking at what it would look like to have 2 new elementary schools. We looked at projected growth, which is the red line, dotted line in the middle. We looked at, again, as I mentioned earlier, capacity and equity. We had administrative options. And then we looked at what our current capacity was. And this was a very open and transparent process with our communities. And you could see that we were reaching a tipping point really pretty quickly. So one of the key things we wanted to get was input from not only the students, but also the teachers who were in the building. And one of the things that really came out first and foremost was not just addressing academics, but addressing the social well-being, the whole child, so to speak. And so, you know, we wanted kids to have a space that was built for them. Teachers wanted flexibility. We wanted different kinds of spaces. We wanted different spaces that would address different curriculum environments. As I mentioned earlier, we wanted campuses that were technology rich, that allowed for collaboration, engagement. We were really trying to challenge our teachers and our community to rethink the way we were doing education. The staff wanted facilities that would address professional development, that would allow them to practice, to collaborate, to have transparent spaces. You know, light was a big theme, right? Natural lighting. Again, we wanted community involvement. We wanted it to address the culture of the building, a positive culture. And then there were some concerns, you know, from the teachers about what that sound would look like. But we had these pictures show, you know, our administrators and our teachers of the year. Our teachers of the year really were instrumental in helping us think through these things. And again, social and emotional support became key. We are a district who has high poverty. We are 75% economically disadvantaged. We are a district that has about 11% bilingual ESL kids, 11% limited English proficiency. We had some academic struggles. And so our academic drivers were really important to us and to me as superintendent. We wanted to improve student literacy. We wanted to build buildings that would help retain teachers. I know that sounds strange, but I think if teachers are in a really nice environment that is supportive and that allows for them to be the instructional leaders that helps retain teachers, we wanted to have buildings that encourage team teaching and collaborative processes. Again, we wanted to have a building that would address the social and emotional learning for students. And we were looking forward to facilities that address project-based or personalized learning, whatever your term may be. And so as it was coming together, the teachers, you know, I say teachers, nurses, administrators, PE coaches, really started to help put together what that would look like. And for this building in particular, that became a kind of a pod environment that was centered around grade levels, that had great collaborative spaces, that were anchored to teaching areas. We really were trying to eliminate the traditional double loaded corridor supports, right? We wanted an open space. We wanted a space that would allow for flexibility in projects and presentations, so that if teachers, more than one, wanted to bring kids together to do a learning activity, they could. And then we wanted small group areas for projects and places for kids who liked quiet time to be able to go and address their types of learning.
And so taking that bond plan and taking that information that the community had given the district, we needed to be able to wait and get that bond approved, which happened very quickly in May. And I think with the positivity of the process, we were able to tell the community the need very clearly, and that's why we had such an overwhelming result in positive votes for the bond. And so immediately after that, the district then needed to find a site for this new elementary school. And if you know I-35 in between Austin and San Antonio, you know that is a very fast growth area. all the communities are starting to grow together very quickly, a lot of development happening. And so that was one advantage that San Marcos CISD had, was they had developers that wanted them to come and put their schools in their neighborhoods. They wanted to focus on that community just like San Marcos CISD wanted them to. And so the district started to negotiate contract for a site in the middle of a brand new site, or a new development. And you can see here where that was. It was going to be in the center of their facility or their development. And the exciting thing is we found a great site right in the middle of the community, but here's the unknowns. You know, it's a brand new development. We didn't know where some of those development or the utilities were going to be. We didn't have roads yet, so we had to start thinking about, if we start designing this, how do we access this during construction? How do we make sure that buses can get there very safely? We had to work with the city and the developer to make sure that those infrastructures were in place throughout that entire process. But also, because of the well-being for the staff that Michael had talked about and the students, we wanted to make sure it had a focus on community. So before we can start to focus on that community, we really need to understand the site constraints. We have 30-foot slope from one end of the site to the other end. We have a community amenity center right across the park, so we could have this as a central hub for the community. So that was a really exciting opportunity that we had. And through the design process, you can see we kind of created a front lawn that matched against the community amenity center. So you could have a fall festival for the school. It could spill over into the amenity center if it got large enough. We had all of our public spaces along the front lawn so that you could actually enter the spaces without having to go through the entire school. And then we have our more private spaces in the back with our play that is more protected from that front road. Here you can kind of see our public spaces are that gym space, the administration. We have our central hub. That's where it's the heart of the school. The students are going in and out of it throughout the day. And then we have our private learning spaces, which we'll dive into in just a few minutes. And just to kind of give you a better understanding of the floor plan, you see our public space up top, our media center with our courtyards that support the media from both sides, from a lower courtyard and an upper courtyard. And then we have our academic wing down below. Again, just a little bit easier to see in this version here. You could see on the lower portion, we have our second and third grade broken out. We have our first and second grade broken out. So you're never having to leave those areas if you're in that grade level. In other schools, you know, if a student wants to go to the restroom, they have to go and walk down the hallway and sometimes around the corner to find that restroom. And in this case, we're trying to keep all that centralized so the students don't have to leave. They can stay in their home, basically, and never have to leave that safety zone. And then we talked about that 30-foot slope difference on the site. And this is an exciting example of how we use that. We were able to create a lower level for our 4th and 5th graders, but we were also able to put our art and science down there as well and create a very interesting courtyard for just art and science. So we've taken this from a macro to a micro. So we understand our site now. Now we start to understand how the building's starting to develop by that public, that private, and that hub space. And now we're going to start to develop with the district that classroom pod and how that works. But before we can jump into the details, let's double check. Let's make sure that we have our building laid out correctly. Make sure it's the safest environment for kids. It makes it so that teachers can use this space in a very flexible way. And you can kind of see this section on the site. You have an upper courtyard that it's a public learning space where kids can investigate. They also have an outdoor auditorium area, but then you have your hub is that library, and then the lower courtyard is that science and art courtyard. And the realization of that coming together in real life pictures here, you could see this This media center is not a typical library. It is a heavy use space throughout the day. Kids travel throughout the day to make sure that they can see what's happening in there. It's an exciting space to be. That upper courtyard has an outdoor seating area. To the left, there's a cistern that they can measure how much water they received if after a rainstorm. And then our lower courtyard space here that focuses on science and art.
So part of the early programming, as Mr. Cardona spoke of, was really about well-being of students and well-being of the occupants. And well-being moves between like who are the people to what types of environments create well-being to what creates wellness from physical, social, and emotional standpoint, and how do those spaces support those things. So we're really creating a full ecosystem of well-being. The World Health Organization talks about well-being as being physical, mental, and social. And I know under COVID, we're all really experiencing this. Our physical spaces have changed, and it's really taking a toll on our mental and social well-being in this sort of extreme view. But in looking at this school design, these were really critical design factors. So in looking at well-being, we looked at air quality and making sure every classroom space was flooded with natural light, physical health and movement, material health, sustainability. We have community gardens and those sort of things. Next. Our overall sustainability plan involved rainwater collection to feed that community garden and daylight harvesting. And then those courtyards that Coleman mentioned. Next slide. That become activity zones for assembly as well as community gardens right off of the cafeteria so that students can learn where food comes from, how to grow it, and what healthy food feels like. Next. The site plan is filled with green spaces, not only that community lawn that Coleman spoke of, but a backyard play area facing the residential area. Next. As we looked at what do kids first need, self-esteem, creating places for them to perform and display their work, relationship building, small learning communities, and places to manage their emotions. So when a student has yet to develop the ability to control themselves, how do they go to a place where they can learn to regulate that? Dining and wellness, safety and security, and small and large group areas. Next. So on the lower level, as we spoke about earlier, it opens up onto a courtyard for science and art and also discharges many of the student pods. It's flooded with natural light and has the ability to work across groups inside and out, each pod opening into that courtyard. The upper area, the same thing. The large community spaces open onto the community lawn and each pod opens into the courtyard for flexibility and adjustment. And the learning pods here are really configured in grouping so that 2 grade levels share a support space between that has a teacher planning area and restroom pod. And that really allows students to move between each pod if their academic ability allows them to move up or down depending on their needs, or even to just move across and have team relationships with peers close to their age. Next. And Coleman spoke about that media center there in the middle is the hub. Next. And the media center as a space also considers large group spaces as well as small acoustically intimate spaces where students can collaborate, work together, or work on an individual basis, really about connecting with each other and working together. Next. Our learning pods are set up in pairs and really promote that teacher planning notion that all of the teachers can hear each other and interact with each other and have a planning zone that's just theirs for that teacher support that Mr. Cardona mentioned in retention. There's also a large group presentation areas. These doors open up to a presentation wall, as well as small nooks where students can crawl into and read, really focusing on that literacy issue. Next. So looking at the pods are really 5 classrooms in one area. And one of the things that came out of our discussion about social and emotional well-being is that students who learn at different speeds may not necessarily be best for them to travel down the hall. And can we have that at fingertip access where students flow in and out of small group areas directly from their learning space that helps push them academically along, or offers locations where they can collaborate in teams? I think right now some of these are used both as reading intervention as well as group spaces, but they're all filled with transparency between the learning space. Here's a sort of a 3D version of the pods with classrooms that each connect to each other, a wet lab in the middle, and that presentation area, again, creating that confidence where students need to learn to speak in front of others, and where the faculty have the opportunity to have a whole grade level together for an activity. Next. And that space is connected all the way through that presentation into each classroom with glazing so that students are always monitored and can always work between in their safety zone where they collaborate with their friends. And then from that wet lab looking back out, each of the pods are connected into the courtyard so that indoor and outdoor begin to bleed together. And the small group, large group, and medium group spaces, as well as presentation areas, are all linked. Next. So as we rethink student and community needs, we look at the spaces that support well-being, from self-reflection to sensory to flexibility, outdoor, community, and connections. Next. Self-reflection areas allow students moments to get away, moments to focus on one thing. Next. And sensory spaces, we have lots of different tactile opportunities, anything from exterior masonry, next, to soft acoustic walls of bright colors in the library, next. And then flexibility, the way that the pod moves between each other and allows that flow between classrooms and between various size groupings, as well as adjustable walls. Next. To the way the media center can go from being a large scale presentation space to being a small scale, intimate work area without any change, with just flexible furniture. Next. And then the way we support well-being through outdoor connections, both of the pods being connected indoor, outdoor, as well as the cafeteria. Next. And those outdoor connections flood all the way through the media center that transcends the upper and lower courtyards. Next. And our community spaces, from community gardens that link up with the cafeteria that connect all the way through to the front yard. And offer large-scale presentation areas. So our connections run from the upper area of the library down below to the lower robotics lab and STEM lab. And connections across the site that traverse the high and the low courtyards and really make this learning space of the library be the literacy hub for the school. Connections between faculty. I'm going to pass this to Mr. Cardona.
And so Angela has talked about the well-being of not only students, but staff. And I think in this time with our COVID situation, I think this facility kind of the unforeseen benefit was the way this building is laid out has allowed the staff to bring back students and space them in a way that allows families to feel that their child is safe, that teachers feel that they are safe and cared for by the district. And that has allowed us to kind of use spaces. So there's individual study carrels that now teachers are using to do remote learning while their colleagues cover the kids in the classrooms. And we didn't think about those things, you know, a year and a half, 2 years ago, but this facility like kind of has become our showcase for bringing back families back safely and really become a positive thing for our district. Next slide. It really, I mean, as a superintendent, it really is a facility that, yes, it's a building, but I think the effects of that building are that it was built with a lot of love and care by professionals who didn't just see a facility, they saw something that would benefit students and adults. And it is what the expectation is now for what future facilities look like, probably in San Marcos, but also in this region as other districts come and look at this building and what you can do with architects and people who are willing to open themselves up and allow voices from multiple perspectives to create a building centered on the well-being of students and adults.